You're listening to The Manning Report with your host, James David Manning. The news behind the headlines.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, and open-minded people wherever you live across the United States of America, Europe, and the world, this is David Duke. And today I've got a really exciting show coming up. We're going to have on Pastor Manning, who is a pastor of a church in Harlem, who has really been an incredible African-American voice for really his people and trying to advance his people in their true interest by living a clean and sober Christian life and to really advance their true interests as a people rather than what the controlled media says. I just want to go ahead and first welcome to the show, Pastor Manning. It's really great to have you on, and you're attacked by the media just like I'm attacked, but I've watched a lot of your videos, and you seem to be a very sensible and also, I must say, a very entertaining and interesting individual with a lot of just good, folksy humor and sense for the betterment of your people and really the betterment of Americans in the world in general.
Dr. Duke, I have to tell you that this is an unusual privilege that I am so thankful for, to be able to talk with you after watching you for so many years. I'm here in Harlem and talking to David Duke. This is historic, and I believe it's going to be a great meeting of the minds. I appreciate your statements regarding my encouraging people, especially black people, African American as they are referred to live a clean and a sober and a decent life. And that I've done that, and I've done it truthfully and honestly as well. It's not well accepted by a whole lot of folk, but this is historic to be talking to you. I just never thought it would happen, but it is. I'm talking with David Duke, Dr. Duke.
Well, it's happened, and let's hope. Let's go ahead and get it in some areas, and I really want to go over with you for just a moment something that's top of the news. It's not as top as it should be. It should have been the lead story for the last 7 days. But we have the Epstein scandal, the trafficking of young women, and we have a scandal that reaches to the highest echelons of government in the United States of America and really around the world. Because what we've had is this predator. His name is Jeffrey Epstein, very, very Jewish. And I'm going to talk about why that's important and why it's an issue and maybe the sources behind this. Not only was he a person that had perverted sexual desires, and he corrupted and he entrapped and he trafficked hundreds of young women, many of them 12, 13, 14, 15 years old.
That's right, yeah.
But there's a really dark side of this thing that the media hasn't talked about hardly at all. Now, the other day, Ann Coulter, who's also, by the way, a fellow New Yorker,
right.
She did a very interesting interview today, an article, and she made a statement on a radio program that she thinks Epstein had a, quote, state sponsor and was running a blackmailing operation. And the evidence is really getting overwhelming about what's going on here. So let me give you a couple of the reasons why she said this, and I want to also quote some commentary that's been out on the internet about this, and this is really kind of amazing. All right, in the first place, Jeffrey Epstein was connected to the top and leading people, really, of the United States political structure. He took Bill Clinton with him. I know you're not a fan of the Clintons either, or Obama.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Right, and he
Bill
took
or Hillary,
them. He
took
took Clinton on 27 different flights on the Lolita Express, which always had young girls taking care of the passengers in ways that we won't mention since it's a family show. But he had that, of course. He also apparently at least once flew Donald Trump. We don't know, but of course Trump had his own jet, so we can't really state definitively on this. But so he was routinely molesting girls, but it wasn't just him. He was trafficking these girls, these young girls, illegally, to leaders in the world. Members of the royal family were out to the Epstein Island. These were they were young men, for instance, like I think it was Prince Andrew or others. He was also involved. We've also got Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz,
That's right.
who's actually a big, who has the top echelons of Israel as his best friends. He wrote a book called The Case for Israel. He was the main attorney, and according to testimony of the victims, Dershowitz was engaging in this sex with these young girls. Now, here's some of the aspects of what she was talking about, and here's some of the commentary on it. All right. Epstein, according to both the girls' accounts, this is Coulter, he wanted to have sex with powerful men, and he wanted them to come back to him and report on it, describe what they wanted, what their fetishes were, and he had cameras throughout the house. So this is obviously for blackmailing purposes, said Coulter. Quote, "It just seems to me something much bigger is behind this, perhaps a state sponsor, powerful enough people." She also said, "It seems to me that there's something very powerful force behind what's going on here, and I'm still nervous about this not coming to a conclusion. Somehow this is going to get compromised." Coulter said it remained a mystery as to how Epstein became a billionaire and that the source of his money should be investigated. Former President Bill Clinton attempted to distance himself from Epstein last night, claiming that he only flew on the infamous Leia Express private jet 4 times, despite flight logs showing at least 26 trips. Now, this is some other reports. Speculation swirling that Epstein may give up names of influential people who used his network in order to secure a maximum prison sentence of no more than 5 years. Since 1973, and this is some more amazing stuff that's going on. I'm talking about the ultimate elite. Now, of course, Trump promoted Mr. Barr to Attorney General. Now, listen to this. This is a fact, okay? In 1973, and this is and Coulter talking again. In 1973, the elder Barr hired the future notorious pedophile Jeffrey Epstein to teach 7th grade classes at Manhattan's elite K-12 all-girls Dalton School. Now, they have this guy teaching K-12.
I know that school, Dalton School. I know that school very well, but go ahead.
And even though Epstein lacked a college degree, which is always a basics for any sort of a teacher to be hired, according to a news report in April by syndicated columnist and author Wayne Madsen. This is an important angle you guys should all be aware of. Now, listen to this now. Epstein's entire financial management firm seems to have been made up. Wall Street people say the only client he ever had was Les Wexner. Who is Les Wexner? The founder of an organization called the Mega Group, formerly known as, quote, the Study Group, which was a collection of the 12 of the richest Jews in America, who met several times a year to plot policy and coordinate their efforts to promote Jewish and Israeli interests. Now, the fact is, Pastor, you just can't make this stuff up. You know who else was a member of the Mega Group?
Let me just interject here. From the statements by Ann Coulter and some of the other ancillary information that you have been able to come up with, and most of which we know about now. We know about the Lolita Express, and we know Bill Clinton's been on there for 20 times or more. Are you saying that somehow or another that this conspiracy was put together not just because of sexual desires, but it was put together in order to be able to blackmail world leaders into a particular idea of thought? And behind this master plan to bring in leaders like Bill Clinton or Alan Dershowitz or others, catch them on camera in sexual engagements and then make them toe the line, or whatever you want to toe the line, was put together by the Mossad or put together by Jewish interest only to be able to have a global power structure held over the heads of these. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's exactly what I'm saying. I'll give you some evidence of this. First of all, we know that the Israeli Mossad, by deception thou shalt wage war, that they're one of the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world. The Jewish spy, Jonathan Pollard, according to our Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger, did more damage to America than any other spy in American history. He actually caused the death of about 200 of our agents during the Cold War to the Soviets, who in Israel actually bartered the information to the Soviets. So they have this operation. Well, how do spy agencies work? Well, the way that a spy agency works in getting their assets, or their agents, are getting people of other countries to betray their country and sell out their own nation for a foreign country, is by getting them compromised. They loan them money, get them in great debt, and then they bail them out. Or if they have a gambling habit, they make sure that they get ruined that way, or they have sexual predilections. It used to be until homosexuality became okay, according to the media. This is one of the ways they threaten people who are homosexual. This would be exposed, and this would destroy their family, their career, and so forth. And this is like standard operating procedure of most of these agencies. Now,
can I interject once again? One is that Jeffrey Epstein was not college trained, but yet was teaching physics and science. The other thing is that he worked for Bear Stearns. He did work for them for a goodly number of years, and he founded his own organization, but he only had one real client. Where did he get his wealth from?
Yeah, that's a real good question. Where did he get his wealth from? Well, the mega group I was going to tell you about, the study group, it was a collection of 12 of the richest Jews in America who met several times a year to quote, promote Jewish and Israeli interests, right? Now, who else was a member of the mega group? It was Edgar Bronfman. Now, he's also the guy that did Birthright Israel, that's celebrated. Isn't it great to be around Jewish DNA? A very radical Jew who sponsored Jewish kids from America to go to Israel. And actually, and it's very famous, in fact, some Jewish writers and Jewish publications in Israel has written that these, when they bring these, they try to pair it up, an even number of Jewish boys and Jewish girls, and then they have these sex parties in Israel. They try to get them to have sex with each other, have babies, and hopefully even make marriages, and continue the Jewish people, believe it or not. But Edward Bronfman, that name I know sounds familiar to you, and that's probably because his daughter in New York was arrested last year for the bankroll of this group called the NXVIM, Hollywood Sex Cult, which was also accused of amassing blackmail tapes. I mean, this sounds like Mega was pretty much like a modern-day Elders of Zion. I mean, Wexner was bankrolling Epstein's operation, while Bronfman was bankrolling the West Coast operation.
So you opened up by saying that, while we're looking at the outer surfaces of what's happening with Epstein, that we're not looking at the deep details of which you are bringing forward. So my question will be, and I see how plausible this could be. I mean, using sex and prostitution, and not that these girls were prostitutes, but prostitution is the oldest profession, and it's been used in many ways to bring down a whole lot of men, and we know that. So
not necessarily bring them down, but to totally control them, because
of course,
this is where Israel could say, you do this, if you're in government, you do this. I mean, let's say that Trump was compromised in this. I don't necessarily know that he is or not, but one thing we know is he talked about America first a lot, and he said every country's got to pay for its own defense, including Israel, and he got a lot of blowback because of that. He also, at the Jewish Republican donors, said, you're not going to vote for me or support me because you can't control me, and you want to control who you can do. But then later, once he became president, and by the way, in 2016, when he was running for president, he had a huge number of interviews where he pointed out that the Saudis were behind 9/11, that the Saudi government, in fact, there was a committee. Most Americans don't even know this because it hasn't been much in our Zionist-controlled news media. But we had a joint committee of the House and Senate that right after the attack in 2001 of the Trade Center, they began a joint committee of both the Senate and the House to investigate foreign involvement in 9/11. And this committee met for a year. They interviewed hundreds of FBI agents, CIA agents, other people all over the world. And they came to the conclusion, in the 28-page, the crown of the report was that, quote, that there's irrefutable evidence that the Saudi royal family, that the Saudi government, right, Saudi intelligence, and Saudi bankrollers were behind the 9/11 attacks. Now, these 28 pages of this official committee of the House and Senate, they were redacted. They were when the report was published for the American public, and the media published this report, all these pages showing the Saudi involvement in 9/11 was all taken out. In fact, not only involvement, but stating.
Yeah,
That
and
they
I
were,
believe that. I believe that report. I believe that's what happened. And of course, we're able to
and Trump
recognize
talked
that the
about
Saudis
this,
were
right?
part of the
So, but
19.
next thing you know, I mean, Saudis, remember, are an ally of Israel today. I mean, and Israel actually supported this radical Muslim invasion of Syria. And of course, against the Lebanese and against the Iranians, they promoted all that. And I have the Halevi on an interview saying that that Israel was actually treating ISIS. These are the same ISIS people that committed this mass murders in Europe and America. The same Al Qaeda, right, that attacked us in the Trade Center attacks, which the evidence is overwhelming, and almost all the hijackers were in fact Saudis, and the evidence is that they financed it. And so Israel was supporting these people against the Syrians, who, by the way, were very friendly to the Christian population of Syria. As you know, I've been to Syria. The great patriarch of the country invited me there. I also talked to the Grand Mufti, who's a very moderate Muslim person.
Yeah.
And they all support Assad. And Hezbollah, by the way, is not only supported by the Muslims in Lebanon, they're very much less radical than the Sunni, and they are actually supported by the Christians in Lebanon. I met Christian leaders throughout Lebanon who said, we support.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Duke. Let me ask you this. I mean, how old is this movement of this sexual, if you will, blackmail of global world leaders that Jeffrey Epstein has been a part of the process? That's the first question. How old is it? Because I would want to know to what degree presidents and other world leaders have been put in place because of the fact that they can be blackmailed or they can be held accountable to their sexual acts that Epstein or other people may have caught them doing. But the other thing,
if you were an intelligence agency and you adopted an asset, what you would do is you'd have this asset, and then if there was something you needed, like one of your agents appointed to a certain position, say as an ambassador or position of power in the CIA or government, so you go to the agent and you just let them see a clip of the video of them with an underage girl, which would destroy their life, which would be unconscious, which would be total destruction of them.
Absolutely.
And you say, okay, so here's the other fact here that is not talked about much in the media. They give her name, but there's three critical players in this whole operation, by the way, of Epstein. In addition to this financier Wexner, there was also his attorney.
Pardon me.
His attorney from the very beginning, who took many trips to the island. Right? I mean, this is even before there was any charges, by the way. So he knew that he was running a risk doing all this stuff. He had an attorney, and he involved Alan Dershowitz in the whole process. And a few of the victims now are testifying under oath that Alan Dershowitz, who's also very close to leading Israelis and powerful Israelis, both in the Mossad and in the government, like Netanyahu, that he was going to this thing. That's one of the people. Then you have Jeffrey Epstein, and then you have the woman who was like they call her the madame or the madam of the whole of this trafficking operation. Her name is Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell, believe it or not, was the daughter, multimillionaire daughter. So why would she get into sex trafficking? She's already multimillionaire, and that's part of the jet set. The multimillionaire daughter of none other than Robert Maxwell, who was a huge British media mogul who owned 200 other media corporations, by the way. And it turned out there was a Jewish head of Jewish involvement in intelligence that exposed the fact that Maxwell was in fact a Mossad agent for years, and by the way, he died a very dangerous death. So we know he was a Mossad agent. That's been proven.
You're saying a British intelligence agent was also a Jewish?
No, he wasn't a British intelligence. He was a British media mogul.
Okay,
so he ran a lot of media, but it turned out he was a Mossad agent. He was reporting, every week or so to the Mossad in Israel, and he was doing what Israel wanted. And by the way,
let me ask you this question, Dr. Duke.
400 corporations.
Does this report that you're giving to me and the information, most of this is casually known. A lot of this, of what you're saying, is widely known. Is this going to blow up in terms of an explosion of people being exposed? I saw Alan Dershowitz the other night on television denying vehemently that he's never had sex. I believe that he has, and that he's on the manifesto of the Lolita Express.
Many times. Many
He has
times.
served with Epstein and a lot of others.
So there's no way that,
So
first
is
of all,
this
there's
going to
no
blow
way
up into some sort
that-
of political explosion of exposing political leaders? Bill Clinton, he's got to be one of the most nervous men on planet Earth today, because I can't imagine that Bill Clinton has not taken advantage of the sexual offers that Jeffrey Epstein would have offered him. I can't imagine that he did not.
not with his sexual record.
Yeah. So where is this leading? Or are they going to cover it up? Get Alex Acosta, who is the labor secretary now, let him be a fall guy for being the attorney general that covered all this stuff up in Florida, and then cover the rest of it up and then going about our business. What's going to happen? Are we going to have
He's part of the conspiracy for sure, because here's the situation. This goes all the way back to the early 2000s, right? And so everybody knew what was going on. And Epstein went to the island a million times. He knew. Everybody knew around. Everybody knew about this. Even Trump later. Even Epstein was still going to the island after Trump banned them from Mar-a-Lago because of the facts that he was trying to traffic women at his Mar-a-Lago resort, right? So Alan Dershowitz had to know what was going on. You're not protected as an attorney when you're involved with, just like if you're in the mafia. If you're an attorney for the mafia, but you're involved in all the mafia crimes and covering up the crimes, then you're just as guilty. And Alan Dershowitz, it looks like, from the evidence that we've seen and what some of the testimony, he's up to his neck in this stuff. Now, he can lie. He's a good attorney. He can make all sorts of good excuses for what's going on. But the point is, so if it was just a question, obviously, there's no question that this guy Epstein had his pick of women. He certainly could have got whatever woman he wanted. It was just
absolutely
a question of
absolutely. And he's got the money.
So this flying diplomats and political people and important people and corporate head all over the world, when there's no evidence that they had any business investment with him or anything, not a shred of it. That he was doing this for free, giving them all this stuff. This shows that there's some sort of, and that's the real question. Every time they do a report on Epstein, they say it's a mystery where he got his money. Well, if you're the state, you can easily spend $500 million. That's easy. We spend $38 billion to Israel, right? Just in the recent our foreign aid package, biggest in the country. You can take $1 billion if you can affect world leaders and very important people in the American government to get Israel what they want, including that massive money, including support in the United Nations, including anything they want, because they can blackmail them. And that's what's really going on here. Now, where will this come out publicly? I don't know. I mean, we just have to, see. They're already trying to suppress it. Now, what happened in early was Acosta. What they did was they filed they sequestered and they absolutely hid and sealed all the evidence in the case. And they also promised that there'd be no indictments of anybody else except for Epstein. Maxwell, the madam who was running the operation, the physical operation every day, she wasn't arrested. She wasn't charged. That was all sealed. All the people that they had in there molesting these girls who were given these girls, all those people are protected. They said there'd be no more indictments. This is the highest level cover-up you could determine. This was the federal prosecutor.
With what Acosta did in Florida, then we should have the names of all the people who were given this immunity that you just spoke about, that they would not be prosecuted. Only Epstein would be prosecuted in this process. So obviously their names ought to be a part of the public record.
They would be, but it's going to be the media. Now, the media covered up a lot of this, by the way. In fact, even as early as 2002, 2003, major New York publications, Jewish publications,
well, let me
Zionist
ask you
publications.
Is this Epstein event, is this
actually
influencing?
not. We're taking out, like a Vanity Fair article, a good example. The editor, Epstein, and their people contacted Vanity Fair, and they took out the allegations and the evidence about Epstein's sex ring that they were operating. Had him take it out of the publication. There was a story about Epstein in CNN, which is controlled. It's been a Zio-controlled organization for years, and in CNN also blocked out the stuff, any sort of negative things about Epstein. This cover-up's been going on a long time, and this should be the biggest story in the world. It's not. it's like fourth or fifth tier story, and this should be the biggest story because this has everything. It's got sex, sex, lies, and videotape.
I was about to say videotapes.
It's got massive corruption of former presidents and leaders and royalty around the world. And it's got a criminal cover-up and letting some guy go who's guilty of some of the worst crimes that a man can commit or anybody can commit against innocent young girls.
So then your assumption, your estimation is that this is not going to blow up into anything larger, or
I don't know.
It's not going to expose anybody. I mean, that appears the way you're assuming that.
And the only reason it can is because, and we can talk about this issue, which you are aware of. The only reason this could blow up is because today we do have an internet, and the internet has allowed a democracy of information. So it used to be when you and I grew up, because you're an older guy like I am, when you had ABC, CBS, and NBC, ABC was Goldenson, NBC was Sarnoff, and CBS was Paley, right?
Right.
Three Zionists. They controlled basically the news. And if you didn't get on one of those three networks, and they didn't talk about something, it just wasn't talked about. Even PBS was controlled by them, by the way. And but today the internet enables people to share information, and scandalous things like this and injustices like this are able to be spread. And that's why we're having the Google shut down. They're even doing search engine control. That's why we're having the Facebook. And that's another, two overwhelmingly Zionist organizations are operating that. And they've suppressed a lot of your stuff, as you know. I've seen their attacks on you.
Amen goes right there, my brother. Amen goes right there in terms of what they suppress about me. But go ahead.
And my videos are banned, and they're in Europe, and they're restricted. And even though I'm a former elected official, I'm still in headlines every other week in this country of some kind or another. And yet I can't even sell my biography. It's an academic biography of myself, my awakening, and that's been banned from Amazon.
You can't get a publisher to publish your biography? Is that what you're saying?
Well, first of all, we couldn't get any New York publisher because they wouldn't dare let me.
But nobody. What about some of the Christian Zondervan and some of the other publishers that it would, I mean, you've got an interesting history whether people agree with you or not. Yeah. I think it would sell a ton of books. Nobody would touch
it has, you. And they're trying to suppress it, and that's what goes on.
This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.